They told us our names were pagan, our drums were unholy. To follow Christ, we had to forget ourselves.
But we learned Christ does not erase culture, He redeems it. He takes what is broken and makes it whole.
Yet in Europe, another storm was rising. The promise of freedom, but bought with amputation. A faith stripped down to sermon and song. Without mother, without saints, without sacraments.
And that simplicity, though it felt pure, left the soul hungry. For when you cut the roots, the tree cannot bear fruit.
Is this freedom or is it emptiness?
This is the story of how Luther's simplicity birthed a shallow gospel and why so many today are still searching for depth. Luther was working on real problems because, yes, the Catholic Church had abuses happening. There was a lot of things that he was not okay with. He decided in his own way to leave the church. And that brought a revolution. When we think about the Protestant Reformation, we never necessarily talk about how the church changed its way after. We always think about the beginning with Luther. The Middle Age were dark. There was nothing happening. The monasteries were not flourishing. So many lies. And I touched a bit about that all throughout the couple of episodes that you've probably already seen. We had to change things. Now, the way to go about it was probably not the right way of dividing, because it's always a division, it's always a separation, where to go, what to pick. All of those division, all of that fragmentation get us to be a lot more overwhelmed, get us to be a lot more divided, get us to be not part of one community but a divided community. And that gets us to create even more tension, because when you live into the Western world, and especially in North America, you may see Protestantism and Catholicism a certain way. When you leave North America, or when you didn't grow up here, you have a vision of Protestantism that is probably going to be a little bit more different or a lot less divided. I would call him a spiritual mentor, because he was for the whole family. When I used to live in Cameroon, he was there, help us pray when we were going through challenges with my mom especially. He would give us a lot of prayers to do, he would guide us, he would talk to us and give us a lot of counseling. And it's recently that I've learned that he was Protestant. He's always been Protestant, but he was somebody that was so in love with Jesus. He didn't need to mention that he was Protestant for me to see him and trust him with everything that he would tell us to do. He never had that hateful spirit that I may see with a lot of our Protestant brothers and sisters. There's a lot that I know online, that I've seen in my personal life, that don't have that compassion and that love when they know that I'm Catholic. But at the end of the day, the priority and the most important thing is for us to be united, especially into the Catholic Church, because when everybody gets to see that, they are becoming Catholic. When you want to be intellectually honest and you're looking for the truth in that way, you're becoming Catholic. It's not even a debate at this point. Lila Rose, that I talk about all the time, became Catholic through being pro-life, because she's against abortion and against that way of living. So by doing more of that, by doing more of that work, she found the truth into the Catholic Church, being pro-life. It can go through anything, a special saint, Mary, Jesus himself, the tradition, the liturgy. Luther loved Jesus. He was a follower of Jesus. And he was responding to real abuses of the church. But the problem is that when you're stripping out the church from the saints, from the liturgy, from the tradition, you also lose the depth. There's something that makes a lot of people go back to the Catholic Church even when hating the Catholic Church. The Protestant Reformation didn't just break away from the Pope. It broke away from the Church as mother. And without Mary, saints, feast days, or icons, the faith became just a sermon, just a song, just a book. And there's been narrative around the Protestant Reformation, and one of them is the Bible being translated for the first time with Luther into the German. And some clarification needs to be made here. The Bible was already translated into various local languages way before Luther. These translations were part of the church's long-lasting effort to make the scriptures accessible to different linguistic communities, even if they haven't been widespread and uniformly available as they became later after Luther. So one of them was Latin Vulgate. St. Jerome's Latin Vulgate, completed in the late 4th century, was a crucial translation that made the Bible accessible to those who spoke Latin, which was the common language of Western Christendom at the time. It was a Coptic and other Eastern languages translations, and it existed in Coptic, Syriac, and other Eastern languages, reflecting the linguistic needs of the early Christian communities in those regions. I talked about the first wave of the Christianity in Africa. There was a Gothic translation as well. In the 4th century, Ulfilas, a missionary, translated parts of the Bible into Gothic for the Visigoths, making one of the earliest translations into a Germanic language. And on top of that, early translations in English were already existing because portions of the Bible were translated into Old English by figures such as Aldhelm and Beatty in the 7th and 8th century. Later into the 14th century, John Wycliffe and his followers produced an English translation, although his work was controversial due to his other teaching. You had the Slavic languages too, translation, because Saint Cyril and Methodius in the 9th century translated the Bible into Old Church Slavonic for the Slavic people, aiding in their evangelization. I talked about the rise of the tribal conversions that started happening around the 7th century, and there were already translations of the Bible into those languages. So even if those translations existed way before the Reformation, Martin Luther translated the Bible in German in the early 16th century was still groundbreaking. It made the scriptures widely accessible to ordinary Germans and was a significant factor into spreading literacy and biblical knowledge. The Reformation era saw an explosion of the vernacular translations and increased emphasis on personal engagement with the scripture. Because way before that, people couldn't read and the paper was way too expensive. And that's the reason why the Bible was not something that every person could own. And on top of that, having people not even being able to read. So, of course, the statues, the visual part, were helping those people to connect with the beauty of Jesus, to connect with the beauty of Christ, to connect with the beauty of Christianity. That is a part of the Catholic Church traditions because it's been there for 2,000 years. So obviously it's going to keep that because there was nothing bad about it. We talked about the enculturation and the integration. You can't get rid of the statues just because they're statues. You get rid of the totem. You get rid of people making those statues as being literally spirited and divine. So the Bible became something that was a lot more popular and a lot more spread because the cost of the paper kind of got down as well. Reduced. People were able to read more. The Bible was not as expensive. And when we think about the modern times today, everybody can get a Bible. You don't need to do much to read. It's a basic of going to school, right? And in the Western world, we see that and we forget that in any other part of the world, not everybody can read, not everybody have access to the Bible, and maybe the statue can be a sign for them to connect back to Christ. But on the other side, with the Catholic Church too, a lot of things were so much more traditional before the reform of Second Vatican Council. And there's a lot of traditionalists, Catholic traditionalists, that are claiming the rite of the Latin Mass being one of the most classic and traditional part about being Catholic. And for you to not go to, let's say, a TLM, for example, is you not understanding and being truly into the depth of what it is to be Catholic. And going to a TLM It's almost like pride or a reward of you being a good Catholic and amazing Catholic. And because I think about the culture and I think about the cultural background, the Latin Mass is an expression of the Catholic Church. It's not the only one. So if you're African or if you're from any other part of the world and you want to claim back your roots, you being Christian, you being Catholic, and getting through your culture and relating to Christ in that way, not to mix things pagan wise, but to embrace the beauty of your culture. You may think about other expressions, especially considering the diverse liturgical traditions across different cultures and rites. That would include the Byzantine, the Alexandrian, Coptic, the Antiochian, the Syriac, the Armenian, the Maronite, and Chaldean rites. These rites have been in continuous use since the early centuries of Christianity and have their own liturgical languages and customs. And not all of them are in communion with Rome, but they are an expression of the Catholic Church still. African Christianity too is a little bit different when you think about the Latin Mass or the Roman rites. Various regions, especially in the early church, had distinct liturgical practices adapted to local cultures while maintaining unity in essential beliefs and communion with Rome. This diversity manifested in different languages and emphasis in worship. Because the Ethiopian Bible, for example, have 86 canons, if I'm good with the numbers. It's a bit more than the Roman Catholic Bible. And it's because it's part of the tradition, it's part of the liturgies. And it doesn't mean that because there's more canon that it's going to go in contradiction with the Catholic rite or the Catholic Latin Mass. With the Second Vatican Council reforms, it led to significant liturgical reforms, emphasizing active participation by the laity, allowing the vernacular local languages to be used in the Mass to help understanding and the participation as well. The Council produced the new Roman Missal, often celebrated in the vernacular. While the vernacular Mass became common post-Vatican II, the Latin Mass was not abolished and continues to be celebrated worldwide, especially in communities attached to the traditional rites. Many bishops were politically appointed, not spiritually trained. And you see the same trait into shows that you can see from the old times with Christianity, where you see the bishops usually in political positions more than their spiritual positions. But a lot of them started misusing it and distorted it. Today, a lot of people claiming or at least having something against the Catholic Church is for them to see that political aspect. When they think about Rome, when they see the bishops, when they see the Pope, they see a political institution, and that's not the point. In North America, something that I've noticed, politics is playing a big role, especially in the United States. I used to say that I was conservative, that I was a trad way before the label thought to be used the way it is used today. Because I hold to traditional values, I hold to the tradition of things. Original is a good thing, unique is a good thing. I always saw a unique side about me, but always rooted into traditions, the traditional values, because that's what my parents gave me. Respect the elders, man has a place in the family, woman has a place in the family, and those are complementing. They're not fighting each other to have a place. Because of Christ bringing that structure, bringing that order. But in North America, it's really something that is such a bigger deal than what it is. And when I did the video about the election with Carney and Trump rhetoric narrative that we hear so much in Canada, hating Trump pretty much, I saw and discovered or realized at least that even the conservative here, they don't hold to traditional spiritual Christian values. They would get the part of the economic rights. And I love that. I believe into that. But they forget a lot about the deeper part of being conservative. It's Christ. It's Christian values. As simple as that. You don't even need to add more. If you want to, please do. But the basis, the essential, is to be Christian, the Christian values. And that is a thing that you can find in any party. You know, a moral person would hold to a lot of traditional values. Black people usually hold to a lot of traditional values, even if they see themselves as liberals here because they are immigrants. And the narrative about being an immigrant is that Trump hates any immigrant and every immigrant. You just hear what you want to hear, but you don't discern by yourself, and the lie and the trap and the manipulation and the control of the government in general, because they have things in mind that they want us to do. Indulgences we sold as spiritual currency. You pay more, you go to heaven. You pay even more, you get to have a special place close to Christ. And what Christ says is that do my will and you will go to heaven. But the more you're getting sanctified, the more you're getting purified, the closer you're going to get to Christ. But through obedience, through whatever you do here, through your yes every single day. So you don't get to be Christian one day and reject all of it and be like, oh, I'm going to get to heaven because I was saved. No, you're getting saved, you were saved, and you will be saved. That's a process. That's the path of the Christian life in general. That's you growing up from being a child to being an adult into the Christian life and having that spiritual maturity. And that is being a saint at the end of the day. They did things, they had to go through things, they had to die for Christ in sometimes the worst way ever. So yes, that will get you a place somewhere in heaven, probably closer to Christ, but it's not because of your works, the human works. It's you obeying again and again and again, saying yes. Some people, they say yes to what they want to say yes to, and they kind of being disobedient to other things. But if you're starting to separate your life like that, you're being disobedient. Simple. Don't make it harder. You are being disobedient. And the Luther's appeal came from the fact that everything got simpler. You connect to what is going on today. We are getting so used to be lazy, physically and spiritually. And I want to say that I need to go back to the gym and doing my thing. And every single day when I wake up, I'm like, oh, maybe another day. I'm like that. So when you're trying to understand the beauty of the Catholic Church through the sacrament, through the icons, through the feast days, through the saints, everything gets more complicated because we are used to the simpler life. We're not getting used to do difficult things. People had a lot of physical activities that they would do every day. Cultivate the soil. The woman at home was working. The man outside of home, cultivating and hunting, he was working. It was hard life. We didn't have no Uber, we didn't have no McDonald's, and because we got used to that so much, when we go back to understand what it is to be truly Christian through the Catholic lens and the fullness of it, why are you making it complicated when you just have to believe in Jesus Christ? But that's the point. It's a relationship that you're building. It's not any relationship. It's a relationship with your Savior. People going before you, the context of it, the meaning of it, the beauty of it. It's like respecting the beauty of the church and the beauty of your culture. It's loving people, truly loving people, understanding why you need to love them. Not in the cultish way where you just have to love for the sake of loving, but understanding what it is to be loved, understanding what it is to love, understanding what it is to receive love, to give love, true love, the right love. And that spreads through everything. But because it got so simplified with Luther, people, I feel, and again, that's me thinking, I could be wrong about it. It's a hard time for a lot of people to go back to the whole fullness because it's so much. But you don't have to do all of that. I love Mama Mary. She is the mother of Jesus, the most beautiful, the most perfect, the most obedient. And every single time that I'm in my own way of thinking and way of doing things, when I'm trying to be rebel in my life, I need to think about her. I have to think about her. I think about her. I'm like, okay, I messed up here again. Okay, let me just go back to the model of Mary. Okay, yeah, she would have said yes, not me saying no to everything. So yeah, now you won't even have to write a book by yourself. You would just ask AI to do that. I'm not suggesting that, and I'm not saying that everybody is gonna do that. I'm just saying that there's a lot of things that you can do a lot faster, a lot better, not through your own efforts, but through every tool that you're gonna have around you. And that changes your mindset too. That changes your brain. That changes you understanding, integrating things, and the effort even to do those things. And Luther's appeal to it was to remove the priest as a mediator and emphasize the priesthood in all believers. That's not bad, but again, distorted because everybody has a place, everybody has a role. When you are in a family, the role that you have as a wife is going to be different of the role that you have as a husband. Not in a bad way, in a complementary way. So when you have a priest guiding you, a real priest, a true priest, the priest that I had, was the best. He has a role of guiding the ships, the lost ships, through the authority that Jesus Christ gave to Peter. And that gets to the apostolic succession. It's not his undoing, it's the authority that was given to him. But when everybody can be a pastor preaching throughout the church, where is the order? Where is the structure? Because if everybody has a Bible and then we have different churches believing different things, we may question a lot of things. But this simplicity often meant stripping down of all the sacramental, historical, and mystical elements that gave Christianity its richness and rootedness. And that is the issue. The Catholicism all globally retained structure. It is a hierarchy. The priests, the bishops, Rome. The Latin Mass, the elaborate rituals, the Marian devotions, the relics, and the saints. It was already there way before, during the first centuries of Christianity. But in contrast, the Protestant services looked simpler, more democratic, especially in rural and poor communities. So the perception that grew was that Catholics are the religion of robes, candles, and educated men. Protestants are the people's church. And this was never the full truth. Bad Protestant simplicity was marketed as freedom, while Catholic richness was painted as oppression. And think about it today, how it is today with the Christianity altogether, and how a lot of people outside of Christianity see the Christianity. It always comes down to the Catholic Church, always. When the enemy is using your wounds, you don't even want to be a part of it because you feel like it's too perfect, it's too beautiful. To think about the life of those saints way before they knew Jesus. They did have the unborn again experiences, all of them. It was the feast of St. Augustine on August 2026. I'm gonna write it here just to make sure. The priest was talking about the life of St. Augustine and how he was full in his worldly life. He loved women, he would use the money for that, he would waste money. His mom would cry every single day because she didn't understand what was wrong with his kid, that should just know Jesus, and he didn't want nothing to do with that. And he had his own born again experience, and he found Jesus and became a saint. And it was not easy. He lost a lot. He lost a lot. Saint Francis of Assisi is the same thing. He was very rich, or at least his family was very rich, so he didn't have a lot of money problems until he discovered Jesus and he wanted to be a part of the Christian life. He lost everything. His own family disowned him. He was eating in the street. He was living in the streets, coming from money, good standing, and living in the streets because he said, I want to follow Jesus. So all those saints, they didn't have anything perfect until they got to understand and follow and love Jesus. And that's a part that maybe is one that a lot of people ignore when they go to Mass, when they decide to be part of the Catholic Church. It's not a place for perfect people. It's a place of sinners. It's the hospital for sinners. That is the Catholic Church. We are sinners. We're not perfect. The priest is not perfect. He's gonna mess up, but he's still gonna have the authority that was given to him. Even among the apostles that was following Jesus, Judah was not perfect. We know what he did and what he chose to do. So when you have on one end Luther with the Protestant Reformation that stripped down everything from the church, and on the other end the traditionalists that are going to tell you that you are just not Catholic enough, you have a hard time feeling. And that's why in Africa today we see a lot of rising of the emotional driven churches, because they're mostly led by Protestantism. And with the influence of United States all over the world, you're gonna have more of that influence. When I grew up, I wouldn't see a lot of non-denominational Protestant churches in Cameroon. You would have the classic Protestant, more traditional one, but with the poverty, the economic challenges that a lot of people are facing today, you have a lot more of those churches being built up, being created. And at the same time, you have a lot of people claiming back to the own way of worshiping God. Having the Bible, reading the Bible is just the Bible and Jesus, and that's pretty much it. And the Holy Spirit, obviously. But you get so much more narrow-minded. A good part of my family became Protestant through churches like that. Through churches telling them that the Catholic Church is demonic. The Catholic Church is bad. We are pagan. We're just covering it. They don't want to feel like they're worshiping a white god. They don't want to feel like they're worshiping colonization influence of Christianity, because they associate the Catholic Church to the second wave of colonization that was pretty bad, or at least from what we learned, that we've always learned growing up. Even unconsciously, by rebelling against the Catholic Church, if you were Catholic before, you reproducing a way of claiming back the freedom, just like the pagans were doing way before, when they were worshiping gods and they didn't want anything to do with Christ, because for them it was a lie. But deep inside there's a wound. When you left the Catholic Church, there was a wound. Something happened, an experience, a story. There's always a story. A priest abuse, or a member of the community that were not nice. The desire, the lust, the world offering us that we can be free. The moment that we reject Christianity, we can be whoever we want. We don't need God, we don't need Jesus. It's within us. You have God in you, starting with the truth, but the half truth, and distorting the truth to make it a lie, and you believing in it your own way. The enemy can create or can recreate anything. He's getting anything of the gift that God is giving you, and he's distorting them, because he can't do anything else. He doesn't have that power nor that influence to destroy you like that. If God doesn't allow it, it's not going to do anything. So it's going to distort the truth. And with the emotion, with the misery, with the poverty, you feel like you're losing control, your identity, and you're dying inside. It doesn't feel good. And there's a process at the same time of you dying inside to be born again in the right way, to be in Christ, to be in full communion with Christ. You have to go through that process of death. The more you're going to say yes, the more you're going to be better at saying yes, the more you're going to have those graces to say yes even more, to bigger things, to more challenging things, to more painful things, because you're going to have that grace. And the rise of the African independent churches that we see today is very similar, or at least mirrors the same way that you're going to see in United States with the non-denominational churches. The Africans, they want something made by them, by African, from Africans. They want that identity back. They want the rhythm. They want the language. They want that cultural familiarity to be able to connect back with their own stories. And the same way people are going back to the Catholic Church with their own stories, it's not always the same entryway. Sometimes it's Mary because they have that wound. Sometimes it's Jesus himself. Sometimes it's a saint. Sometimes it's the liturgy. So you can't apply the same formula to everybody and everyone. And that's why a lot of people would reject Christianity, would reject the Catholic Church, not only with the lies that we've been told about what the Catholic Church is and did, but it's your own woundness that the enemy is using against you that makes you reject the Catholic Church even more. And by being healed, by being whole, is by getting through the purification process. It's not all butterfly all the time. When you're getting closer to Christ, sometimes there's a lot of things that just happen, and you just wonder, what am I doing? A lot of people, from the experiences and videos that I've been able to see, when they get back to Christ, the first couple of stages and phases, they are going through the worst of it. The more they say yes to Christ, the more bad things start happening. And a lot of us, we may see that and fear that and reject all of that and be like, I don't have no strength. But that's the point. You have no strength. That's why you need to rely on Christ's strength. And the more you're going to do that, the more you're getting tested to that, the more you are able to say yes and not taking things in your own hands and trying to have the control over everything. Those independent churches, they give voices to Africans with their own pastors, the leaders, their own styles. When I was younger, you would have the choir, the woman singing, having that song being done into my dialect, for example. And that was so beautiful. I loved it. So these are part of it. And we have that tendency because we want to go so far at being original, at being unique, at adding everything, because we want to claim everything from our own identity, that gets to be a real issue when you want to embrace anything and you don't understand that the separation needs to be made. And that's why when you go blindly into any independent church in Africa, you're just gonna go, either it's gonna be the Bible and rejecting everything else, or you doing a lot of things in the same bucket. your pagan way, your old traditions, ancestors, and then you being Christian. And the fusion integration becomes a lot more easier, but very toxic, very dangerous, because you don't want to play that. You don't want to play that game. Restoring the emotion goes through charismatic preaching, the drums, the healing services, the local songs. The dancing is something that is very included into the African traditions. When I think about the music, when I listen to music, it's not just the dance, it transports you somewhere. And that's why we are so attached to that rhythmic approach of doing any type of mass prayer. You move a lot, and as long as it's appropriate, you can do that. But not everything has to go into the same bucket just because you want to claim your identity back. But sometimes it's a complete show where you have people doing miracles. And for me, it's very uncomfortable because Christ is not there for the show. It's not a clown. You gotta respect that. You gotta respect the reverence. And of course, a lot of people may disagree with what I'm gonna say, but there's a part of just the tradition that makes everything a lot more holier, a lot more beautiful, as long as you understand why we're doing it that way. You can connect the dots and you can connect it back to what you can do in your own culture, in your own background. And the problem of people not wanting to go back or not returning to the Catholicism or Orthodoxy when we think about the first wave is that many don't even know the ancient African Christian roots. They don't do the due diligence of searching. And they get trapped into a lie of making them believe that by going back to the own gods, going back to Agun, everything is going to be fine. When you still hung onto what the white people did, you can't fully heal. You're destroying yourself from within, but you don't even realize that. So I hope it was very helpful for you to understand where we're coming from when we think about Protestantism versus Catholicism. You not necessarily being part of the Western world, going back to your roots, claiming back your roots is very trendy nowadays to be your own person. We connect through stories, people's stories. It's natural, and that's why we have saints within the Catholic Church, because by looking at the lives and seeing them as models, even if you don't believe into the sainthood, just look at the lives and see for yourself what you are being a part of. We're not perfect, but we're strong. Glory to Christ, thanks to Christ, because He's giving us that grace, not to be misused, not to be destroyed. And Luther did create that division a lot more than what he realized that he was doing back then, because way after him, there was a lot more of those divisions happening. He didn't create the whole chaos that we are going through today when we think about Christianity, but definitely opened the door for that. And I always want to say, I have nothing against Protestant, good-hearted lovers of Jesus, but for you to be fully healed, fully whole, wherever you're coming from, whatever you do, it's always going to be the Catholic Church. That fullness of the truth is there. Find your way again. Find your roots there. It's not you. I'm a coach. I love helping people, getting them to be confident on videos in front of the camera. I believe that everybody has a voice that we can use for the goodness of the kingdom of Christ. Feel like you want to be part of it. You feel the calling. This is going to be a place for you to understand, to discover more of the depth of being Catholic, to understand your story, to connect back to your story, to claim that in Christ. And I offer the Rosary Challenge, and with the QR code, you're gonna be able to have access to it, to understand the Rosary, to pray the Rosary, to understand Mary, to discover Mary, the love of Mary that a lot of people have, and the love of Mary for us. We are her children, so there's no better love than a mom love, and we all know that. Let me know once you want to hear more on this channel. I'm opening the doors. Any ideas are welcome. So let me know if you're thinking about something, and the rest is gonna be down below. Like I say all the time, keep smiling because it's contagious in a good way. Bye.